My grandfather owned a breathtaking lakefront estate that our massive extended family treated like a free luxury resort for 4 decades. He was 88 years old and the most generous man alive. He paid for the property taxes, the maintenance, the boats, and the professional cleaning service after my aunts and uncles would completely trash the place every single July. He never complained, and he never asked for a dime. But last April, he sent a single group email to all 26 adult family members. He said the severe winter storms had damaged the main dock and the wraparound porch. He said he was getting too old to do the heavy manual labor himself, and he explicitly asked everyone to come up for one single weekend to help him paint and repair the property. He didn't ask for money, he just asked for our time and our hands. The excuses rolled in almost immediately. My Uncle David replied saying his weekend golf league was starting. My cousin Jessica said she couldn't risk ruining her fresh manicure before a trip. My Aunt Sarah actually had the nerve to tell him to stop being cheap and just hire a local contractor because he had millions in the bank. Out of 26 able-bodied people, only 3 of us showed up. It was me, my younger brother, and my quiet Aunt Claire. We drove up on a freezing Friday morning and we spent 48 exhausting hours sanding wood painting panels and hammering heavy nails in the spring wind. My grandfather worked right alongside us with a quiet, peaceful smile on his face. He made us chili on Saturday night and we drank cheap beer on the newly repaired dock. On Sunday afternoon, just as we were packing our cars to leave, a black sedan pulled up the gravel driveway. It was my grandfather's estate lawyer. My grandfather asked the 3 of us to sit down at the rustic wooden dining table. He didn't look angry, he looked completely immovable. The lawyer placed a stack of manila folders on the wood. My grandfather calmly explained that he had spent 40 years watching his family treat him like a walking ATM and a hotel manager. He said a home only truly belongs to the people who are actually willing to maintain it. Then he slid the heavy documents across the table. He had legally transferred the absolute deed of the $3 million lakefront estate entirely into our 3 names. But he didn't stop there. He also completely restructured his living trust. He took his entire $6 million liquid fortune and divided it evenly among me, my brother, and Aunt Claire. He left the other 23 family members exactly $0. He legally finalized every single signature while he was still alive, so nobody could claim he was confused or contest a will after he died. We sat there in absolute stunned silence. 2 months later, Memorial Day weekend arrived, and the family group chat completely exploded. Uncle David texted the group demanding to know who took his favorite master bedroom. I calmly replied to the chat and informed everyone that the locks had been changed, the security gate codes were updated, and the property was now privately owned. I attached a photo of the legal deed. The family absolutely lost their minds. My phone rang 50 times in 1 hour. They screamed, they threatened to sue, they called my grandfather crying and begging for an explanation. My grandfather simply answered the phone and told them they should have come to help paint the porch before calmly hanging up. He is still alive and doing great. He sits on the dock we built together every single morning, and he hasn't answered a call from the rest of the family in over a year.
The morning I uncovered my husband's hidden breakfast secret. For 4 solid years, my husband Jake has made me the exact same breakfast. 1 piece of sourdough toast and 1 absolutely perfect sunny side up egg. And I mean perfect. The whites are completely set, 0 burnt edges, and the yolk is brilliantly runny. I always joked that he was a diner cook in a past life, especially since the guy burns microwave popcorn on a regular basis. But last Wednesday, I stayed home sick. Jake kissed my forehead, went to work, and I went to the kitchen to make some tea. When I opened the trash can, I saw something really weird. Hidden under a thick layer of paper towels were 6 ruined eggs, hard yolks, busted yolks, crispy edges. I was completely confused. Over the next week, I started checking the trash after he left for the office. Every single day, 4 to 5 ruined eggs carefully buried like a crime scene. Friday night, I casually asked, "Hey babe, are we going through eggs faster than usual?" He completely froze. Yeah, I've been trying to meal prep boiled eggs for my lunches. It was a believable excuse, but the vibe was just off. So, Tuesday morning, I crept downstairs at 6 a.m. and hid in the hallway shadows. I watched him crack an egg into the heavy iron skillet. 30 seconds later, the yolk broke. He cursed under his breath, scraped it straight into the trash, and hid it under a paper towel. He cracked a second one. The edges got too crispy. Into the trash. A third one. A fourth one. Finally, on the 5th try, he slid a flawless, beautiful egg onto a plate. He stared at it, wiped the sweat off his forehead, and let out a massive sigh of relief. I walked into the kitchen. He jumped, nearly dropping the spatula. "Jake," I whispered, pointing to the trash can. "How long have you been doing that?" He looked completely humiliated. "Since we moved in together," he mumbled. "I literally can't cook, Sarah. I'm terrible at it." "Then why don't you just make me scrambled eggs?" I asked. He looked down at the plate. "Because the very first time I got it right, you closed your eyes and made this happy little hum. I wanted to hear that hum every single morning." I wrapped my arms around his waist, and for the very first time, my perfect breakfast got completely
I told my boyfriend of 8 years that if he didn't propose by my 30th birthday, I was packing my bags and leaving, so he got incredibly defensive and told me I was ruining a massive surprise he had been planning for months. I felt completely horrible and immediately apologized for nagging him. We met in college and built our entire adult lives together, so I blindly trusted him when he kissed my forehead and told me to just wait for my birthday weekend. For the next 2 weeks, I was completely on cloud 9, secretly looking at wedding dresses and dreaming about our future. 3 days before my birthday, I went to use our shared iPad to look up a dinner recipe. His text messages were automatically synced to the screen, and a notification popped up from his 23-year-old female coworker named Mia. It said, "I can't wait for our road trip next week." I completely froze and clicked the message thread. My stomach dropped straight into my shoes. He wasn't designing a custom engagement ring like he heavily implied. He had secretly accepted a job transfer to Austin, Texas, and was planning to move there with Mia. I frantically scrolled up and read a text he sent to his brother saying, "I'm going to break up with her the day after her 30th birthday because I don't want to look like the bad guy who ruined her milestone party, so I'm just letting her think a ring is coming until my moving truck gets here." I sat at the kitchen island for an hour, just staring at the glowing screen, realizing the man I loved for 8 years was a complete coward. He was perfectly fine watching me get incredibly excited over a fake proposal while he planned his escape with another woman. I didn't scream, and I didn't call him at work. I went into absolute cold survival mode since the apartment lease was entirely in my name. I called the landlord and paid the penalty to break it early. I called my dad and 3 of his friends who showed up with a massive moving truck the very next morning while my boyfriend was at the office. We completely emptied the entire apartment in 4 hours, taking all the furniture, the electronics, and the dog. I left exactly 3 things in the middle of the empty living room floor: his cheap clothes, a printed screenshot of his text messages with Mia, and his apartment key. I blocked his number on everything and drove 3 states away to stay with my sister. His mother had the absolute audacity to leave me a furious voicemail 2 days later, saying I was a heartless monster for leaving her son in an empty apartment with no warning right before his big job transfer. I texted her the screenshot of his messages and simply replied, "He was planning to do the exact same thing to me. He just didn't expect me to pack faster." She never responded, and I spent my 30th birthday drinking expensive champagne on a beach completely free from a decade of lies.
She told me calling her a coworker her work husband was just harmless office banter, so when she went on a weekend corporate retreat with him, I quietly broke our lease, hacked up my entire luxury apartment, and left her completely homeless. I'd been dating Chloe for 3 years, and I paid for absolutely everything because she claimed her public relations salary barely covered her student loans, but she somehow always had money for expensive designer handbags. I thought we were building a future until a guy named Damien transferred to her department. At first, he was just a funny guy from her team, but suddenly Damien was in every single conversation we had. Damien hates hot coffee. Damien thinks my car is impractical. Damien said I should dress more modern. Oh, she was constantly quoting him and comparing us. I'm not a jealous guy, so I let it slide until one night her phone lit up on the coffee table. It was a text from Damien that said, "I can't wait to come home to you tomorrow, bring the good wine." My chest completely froze. I asked her about it and kept my voice completely flat. She didn't even blink. She just rolled her eyes and said, "Oh my God, he is just my work husband. It is an inside joke and you are being incredibly insecure. Nobody tells their work husband they can't wait to come home to them," but I didn't argue and I didn't raise my voice. I just started watching. For the next 3 weeks, she started wearing expensive perfume just to go to the office. She started taking phone calls in the shower with the water running. She went to 3 different networking happy hours that mysteriously lasted until 2 in the morning and came home smelling like men's cologne. I decided right then that I was completely done. On a Thursday, Chloe kissed my cheek and left for a 3-day team building retreat that I knew Damien was attending. The second her car turned the corner, I went into absolute survival mode. I called my landlord and paid the massive $3,000 penalty to instantly break the lease that was exclusively in my name. I hired a private moving company and packed every single thing I owned: the custom leather couch, the massive television, the expensive mattress, the kitchen appliances, everything. By Friday afternoon, the luxury downtown loft was completely echoing and empty. I didn't touch her things. I just left her designer bags and her clothes piled up in the middle of the bare hardwood floor. I left my apartment key on top of her clothes with a sticky note that said, "Your work husband can pay your rent now." I turned my phone off and spent the weekend at my brother's house. When I finally turned it back on Sunday night, I had 47 missed calls and a wall of massive text paragraphs swearing Damien meant nothing to her and begging me to just let her explain. I ignored all of them. On Monday afternoon, an unknown number called my phone and I answered it. Hey, it was Damien. He used this fake friendly voice and said, "Bro, you are acting completely crazy. Chloe has been crying for 2 days and we are strictly platonic coworkers. Let me buy you a beer so we can talk man to man." I went completely silent for 5 seconds. Then I calmly said, "Why would I get a beer with a guy who just inherited a homeless girlfriend?" I hung up the phone and blocked them both everywhere. 2 weeks later, her mutual friend posted a photo of Chloe and Damien holding hands at a restaurant, strictly platonic coworkers.
After I survived a horrific car crash that left me in a wheelchair, my husband told me he didn't sign up to be a full-time caregiver and went on our anniversary trip to Hawaii with his coworker, so I emptied our entire house and completely vanished while he was gone. I woke up in the intensive care unit with 2 shattered legs and a fractured spine after a drunk driver hit me. The doctors said I would need at least a year of brutal physical therapy just to walk again. My husband Marcus sat in the corner of my hospital room complaining about how uncomfortable the plastic chairs were and how my accident was completely ruining his busy season at work. When I was transferred to an inpatient rehab facility facility, he visited me exactly twice a week and spent the entire time scrolling on his phone. He never helped me with my meals. He never learned how to transfer me into my chair, and he never once looked at me and said, "We are going to get through this." And by week 6, I was exhausted in pain and feeling completely unlovable. That was when Marcus sat on the edge of my hospital bed and gave a heavy, dramatic sigh. He told me he was suffering from severe caregiver burnout, even though he literally hadn't cared for me a single day. He said he decided to go on our prepaid 2-week anniversary trip to Hawaii without me because he desperately needed a mental break from my depressing medical situation. He kissed my forehead, said he needed a partner, not a patient, and walked out. 2 days later, my best friend sent me a photo from the airport. Marcus wasn't going to Hawaii alone to clear his head. He was standing at the boarding gate, holding hands with his 24-year-old marketing assistant. I didn't cry and I didn't call him to scream. I just stared at the ceiling of my rehab room and let the last piece of my love for him completely die. Then I picked up my phone and called my father. Since Marcus and I lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom house that I fully inherited from my grandparents before we even met, the property deed was completely and solely in my name. My dad and his brothers drove down the very next morning with a massive moving truck. While Marcus was drinking expensive cocktails on a beach pretending to be single, my family packed up my entire life. We cleared out every piece of furniture, every dish, every photograph, and left the house completely echoing and empty. I hired a lawyer to draft divorce papers and legally changed all the locks. Then my dad drove me 3 states away to a premier specialized spinal rehab center near my family's hometown. I didn't text Marcus once during his entire 2-week vacation. On a Sunday afternoon, he finally flew back. He took an Uber to the house, expecting to walk into a clean home while his broken wife was tucked away in a hospital. He used his key, but it didn't turn. He walked around to the backyard and looked through the glass patio doors into a completely empty house. The only thing left inside was a single cardboard box sitting in the middle of the empty living room floor, containing his cheap clothes and the divorce papers. He called me 14 times in a row. I answered the 15th call from my new rehab room, looking out at the mountains. He was screaming, asking where the furniture was and why his key wasn't working. I calmly told him he was right, that he needed a partner and not a patient, so I removed the patient from his life permanently. I hung up the phone and blocked his number. That was 8 months ago. I took my first unassisted steps last Tuesday, and he is currently living in a cramped studio apartment trying to pay off the massive credit card debt he racked up in Hawaii.
My sister laid down an absolute rule for her expensive destination wedding, which was no store-bought desserts, because everything had to be handmade by family to show true love, so I didn't bake her wedding cake at exactly 8:15 p.m. during the reception. My dad angrily texted me from across the ballroom asking where the 5-tier cake was that I was supposed to bring. I had explicitly warned them for 4 entire months that I wasn't doing it. I am 34 and the executive pastry chef at a massive downtown hotel. I work 70-hour weeks on my feet, but my family has always treated me like their personal free caterer. My younger sister is the golden child who calls herself a creative visionary, while I am just the workhorse. It didn't start with the wedding cake. It was a million little demands over the years. Just whip up 50 cupcakes for her baby shower. Just bake a custom anniversary cake for our parents. Just run the kitchen for Thanksgiving. When the wedding group chat lit up, my sister demanded a massive 5-tier vanilla bean cake and 200 hand-painted macarons. I tried to be completely realistic. I told her I am in the middle of my busiest corporate event season, so I will happily pay $1,000 to buy a luxury custom cake from a high-end bakery as my wedding gift to her. She immediately replied, "Those are the rules, homemade only." Her fiancé chimed in, saying it is just flour and sugar. It is for family. I stared at the words, just flour and sugar, and felt my blood boil. When exactly was I supposed to bake a professional wedding cake after working back-to-back 14-hour shifts? I asked her plainly, and she shot back, "You are single and don't have kids, so just prep it at night." Her translation was that my professional time is completely worthless. So I set one firm boundary and typed, "I will not bake this cake. Well, I will pay for a professional one, or you will not have a cake at all." My mom texted me to stop being dramatic, and my sister left me on red. For 4 months, I reminded them every time they brought it up, but they completely ignored me. The wedding day arrived, and I showed up as a normal guest, wearing a nice suit and holding a glass of wine. When it was time for the cake cutting, the wedding planners started panicking. Dad marched over to my table red in the face, demanding to know where the cake was. I calmly told him there is no cake, because I told you in March I wasn't baking it. My sister burst into tears in her expensive dress, screaming that I humiliated her in front of 200 guests and ruined her dream wedding. They tried to spin the story to the entire extended family that I was a jealous monster who sabotaged the reception. But my cousin actually asked for my side of the story, so I just sent him the group chat screenshots. I showed the exact messages where I offered to pay for an expensive bakery cake, and she refused. Word traveled fast, and half the family realized my sister was completely delusional. When I called my dad the next day, he finally admitted the truth, saying, "We just assumed you would eventually cave and do it, like you always do." I didn't ruin her wedding. I just stopped subsidizing her refusal to listen to my boundaries. Since then, I have gone completely low contact. I still show up to family dinners, but I only bring store-bought chips and soda. The golden child finally had to learn that my free labor is no longer available, and the absolute peace I have now is completely priceless. What would you have done? Cave again? Or let the empty cake table speak for itself?
My parents sat me down in their immaculate glass office and told me that the best thing I could do for my older brother's new CEO promotion was to sign over my equity and completely erase myself from the family business forever. I didn't yell or throw a tantrum. I just took the pen, signed the severance paper, and walked out of the skyscraper for the very last time. I am the younger brother in a family that values expensive suits and country club memberships over actual intelligence. My brother Julian was the golden child who played golf and gave charming speeches, but I was the invisible software architect who actually built the proprietary trading algorithm that made our family wealth management firm millions of dollars. For 6 years, years, I sat in a windowless office writing code while Julian took credit for every single record-breaking quarter. When my parents announced that Julian was taking over as the sole CEO, they called me in for a private meeting. My dad looked me dead in the eye and said my introverted personality and lack of polish was a liability to the brand. My mom handed me a legal document and told me Julian needed full control, so I needed to surrender my 30% equity for pennies and quietly disappear so I didn't cast a shadow over his massive promotion gala. They didn't want a brother. They wanted a ghost. I realized right then that I was never a son to them. I was just a highly profitable machine. So I gave them exactly what they asked for. I agreed to vanish, but I am the one who wrote the contracts. When I signed their severance paper, they didn't realize it automatically triggered a massive kill switch in my employment contract. Because I originally patented the core trading algorithm under my own personal LLC, my resignation instantly revoked the firm's commercial license to use my software. I went back to my apartment, packed my bags, and methodically dismantled their entire empire. I remotely deactivated the trading servers, wiped my proprietary code from their databases, and legally transferred my massive personal portfolio out of their management. Then I anonymously mailed a thick binder of Julian's highly illegal offshore tax evasion documents directly to the Securities and Exchange Commission. On the night of Julian's massive multi-million-dollar CEO promotion gala, I was already boarding a first-class flight to Seattle. Right in the middle of his arrogant champagne toast, the firm's entire trading floor went completely dark, and their client accounts were locked down by federal regulators. The SEC raided the gala in front of 300 elite investors and escorted Julian out in handcuffs. By Monday morning, the firm's stock had completely tanked, and their clients were suing them for millions. My dad left me 20 frantic voicemails begging me to bring the code back and fix the family. I listened to the panic in his voice and smiled before permanently blocking his number. 4 years later, I sold my new tech startup for $50 million, and I am happily married to a woman who actually respects me. Last month, my bankrupt parents tried to send me a Christmas card asking to reconnect. I just returned it to sender with a sticky note that said I disappeared exactly like you asked. My entitled wealthy neighbor stole my purebred golden retriever out of my own fenced backyard because her spoiled daughter wanted a puppy, and she ended up getting arrested for grand felony theft in front of her entire neighborhood. I adopted my dog Bailey when she was just 8 weeks old, and we were completely inseparable. She is a highly trained therapy dog who visits children's hospitals with me on the weekends. I moved into a nice suburban neighborhood, and unfortunately, my next door neighbor was a massive snob named Karen who acted like she owned the street. Karen had a deeply spoiled 10-year-old daughter who was obsessed with Bailey and constantly climbed over my fence to try and play with her without my permission. I repeatedly warned Karen to keep her kid out of my yard, but she just rolled her eyes and told me I should share my dog because her daughter deserved to be happy. Last Tuesday, I let Bailey out into the backyard to use the bathroom while I was making breakfast. When I went to let her back inside 10 minutes later, the gate was wide open and Bailey was completely gone. I instantly panicked and sprinted around the neighborhood screaming her name. I ran up to Karen's house to ask if she had seen her. But before I even knocked, I heard Bailey's distinct bark coming from inside her living room. I pounded on the front door and Karen opened it just a crack, blocking my view. I demanded she give my dog back, but she had the nerve to look me dead in the eye and say she had no idea what I was talking about. She claimed she just bought a brand new puppy from a private luxury breeder that morning and threatened to call the police for harassment if I didn't leave her porch. I didn't scream or argue with her. I just stepped back, pulled out my phone, and called the police myself. When the two officers arrived, Karen put on a fake crying act and claimed I was a crazy neighbor trying to steal her daughter's new puppy. She even showed the cops a fake printed receipt from a website. The officers looked confused and asked if I had any proof of ownership. I smiled, pulled out my keys, and pressed a small button on my keychain. It was the remote for Bailey's custom GPS smart collar that I had hidden under her thick fur. Instantly, a loud, high-pitched alarm started blaring from inside Karen's house. I also pulled up the microchip registry app on my phone, showing my exact name and Bailey's medical records. The police immediately pushed past Karen into the house and found Bailey locked in a small bathroom. Bailey ran straight to me and jumped into my arms. Karen started screaming that it was just a misunderstanding, but the police weren't laughing. Because a trained therapy dog is legally valued at over $10,000, they immediately placed her in handcuffs and arrested her for grand felony theft and trespassing. Her crying daughter had to be picked up by her confused husband, while Karen was stuffed into the back of a police cruiser in front of all the staring neighbors. She's now facing serious jail time, and I installed a massive 8-foot privacy fence with multiple security cameras.